All right, so just a little follow-up to the last video. This is kind of a part 2 thing, and this will be short. I realized after reviewing the video that I never mentioned anything about, like, what am I getting? What kind of speed and what kind of whatever am I getting out of this whole setup thing, right? So I use the Archer's Advantage software on my laptop and on my phone a lot, because I tend to get into, like I said, I get into the weeds when it comes to the numbers and focus on details that maybe don't really make whatever. It just satisfies my personality, so I use it. But just for comparison's sake and to put things in perspective, I guess. So last year my arrow build spec'd out at about 485 grains total arrow weight, and that was using the Valkyrie system with the 200 grain Jagger point. So on the front end of the arrow at 485, I was running 222 grains of total point weight, because the sleeve for the 300 micro diameter shafts I was shooting weighed 22 grains, and then the Jaggers are listed at 200 grains, but they actually weigh closer to 205, 202 to 205, and Brent Hahn does that on purpose because, excuse me, holy shit, these are meant to last and be used year to year as long as you don't lose them. So he builds them slightly heavier to accommodate resharpening. So anyways, 485 was my total arrow weight, and last year I was shooting let me see here, an Elite E35, which I'm partial to longer axle to axle bows, so I shot the Elite E35. These limbs maxed out at 76 pounds, so 76 pounds for a 485 grain arrow out of an Elite E35. I was getting 265, 268 feet per second. Okay, 76 pound bow, 485 grain arrow. So this year, because it was time, I bought this 3 years ago. Okay, the bow that I bought before this was an 06 Bowtech Allegiance. Still one of the greatest bows they've ever made, but it's been a long time. I've mentioned in previous videos, I'm not a guy that buys a new bow every single year, because I'm just not like that. So, but this year was the year that I decided to upgrade. The bow that I bought this year is the Prime CT5. Again, it is a 35-inch axle-to-axle bow, but this is Prime's Synergy Technology 35-inch axle bow. This is a much more efficient bow than the Elite. So that same arrow, well, okay, so here's the deal. I went from the aluminum, where the hell did that go? I went from the aluminum center pin sleeves to the steel version, stainless steel version of that, which weighs 56 grains. Or no, 40, whatever, it weighs more. So my total point weight, well, yeah, it's 56 grains. So my total point weight wound up being 256 grains on the same 300 spine arrow, and that pushed my weight, my total arrow weight, up to 508, I think it was, 508 grains. So 508, and a 508 grain arrow coming out of a Prime CT5, maxed out limbs at 81 pounds. I was getting 280 feet per second. So I have an arrow at that point, an arrow that was 30 grains heavier, going 12 to 15 feet per second faster, with a 4-pound increase in draw weight. I mean, I guess it makes sense. But from a knee-jerk reaction, first impression, emotional response to it, dude, I was fucking stoked, man, right? I'm pushing 280 feet per second with an arrow that's over 500 grains. That's significant for someone my size. Like that's badass. So I was super happy with that. However, moving to the day 6 arrows, I mentioned before that, you know, some of the things on my priority list, speed is down the list a little bit, but I mentioned durability as one of my primaries. I mentioned the quietness of the bow, the feel of the shot, and then shit, I don't remember what I was talking about. Anyways, because of the durability issue and my desire for an increase in durability, I went with the day 6 shafts, right, at 11.2 grains per inch. Well, that pushes my arrow weight up like significantly, like right off the bat. So in order for me to achieve the same 280 feet per second with a 510 grain arrow, that would mean that I would have to swap these broadheads, the 200 grain Jaggers, out. If I wanted to stay with the Valkyrie system, swap the 200 grain broadheads out for a 160 grain broadhead, and get rid of the stainless steel center pin sleeve and return to the aluminum center pin sleeve. That would bring my total weight back down to 510, give or take, grains, and that would retain my velocity somewhere in the neighborhood of high 270s to 280. Okay, well, I wasn't overly satisfied with that. Primarily, I'll be honest, because I didn't want to spend the damn money on these things again, right? Like I mentioned before, the Valkyrie system is an investment, and the money you pay for them, I don't take for granted. I'm not a rich man. I'm not a celebrity. I don't do anything extraordinary to earn a living. I'm a full-time police officer, and I'm a part-time bow technician at a local shop. So I'm not making a shit ton of money. The money I spend on these broadheads, I don't want to waste. And I really, really like the design and the performance and the flight characteristics of this 200 grain head. So I wanted to retain this. So I accepted the 542 grain total weight of the day 6 arrow build with the Valkyrie system. Now, here's what all that leads up to. A 542 grain arrow coming out of my prime CT5 at 81 pounds gives me a chronographed speed using a lab radar chronograph, a chronograph speed of 270 feet per second. I can totally live with that. I'm not a speed freak, and 270, you know, if I could get closer to 280, I'd be a happier guy. But everything comes with compromise. So my compromise is the 8 to 10 feet per second in order to save $250. So I'm okay with that. What's my FOC? So on the 508 grain arrows I was shooting earlier over the winter time with my Elite E35, the FOC on that 508 grain arrow was 22%, which is pretty dang high, right? Lots of guys are fighting for that because they think that's super important, which, whatever, man, believe what you want to and go with what you're comfortable with. The day 6 arrows I'm shooting now with an aluminum Valkyrie center pin sleeve and a 200 grain point from Valkyrie. Total weight at 542, my FOC is 17%. Again, I can totally live with that. Like 17% is considerably higher than most, I guess, average arrows, right? And 1% here or 1% there is difficult to get to. It takes a significant amount of added weight to the front in order to gain 1%. So when Brent Hahn says in his podcast with whomever that 1% is a big deal, yeah, it kind of is when you put it in the perspective of how many grains do I need to add to the front in order to gain that 1%. So that's it. 542 grains, 270 feet per second, 17% FOC coming out of a prime CT5 at 81 pounds. All right. Any questions? Give me a shout. Bye.